Bonjour everyone. Ojabinasi Kwenadishnikas. Welcome to the Ontario Native Women's Association's live stream with Knowledge Keeper Ash Morrow. And they are going to be joining us today to share what they know in regards to Métis teachings and Louis Riel Day. And so we welcome everyone into our prospector tent. As you can see, we have our buffalo hides around, and we have our wood stove in the back. And I'm just going to do a short little intro of Ash. So Ash Morrow is a two-spirit mischief maker of things with roots tied to the Red River and Penetanguishene regions. They are originally from Treaty 3 Region 1 in Eagle River, Ontario. However, have lived in Thunder Bay since 2005. Since living in the city, have been able to grow and learn more about themselves, their culture, and share some of their creativity and passion with the community. Ash has committed their focus and path to helping bring awareness and visibility to our rainbow community by raising awareness and pollinating two-spirit teachings and stories. So welcome, Ash.
And thanks so much for having me. I feel honored to be asked to come and share space with you, especially today, especially on Louis Riel Day. It's a really, really big day. So I'm just going to introduce myself real quick. You did a very good job on Penetanguishing, by the way.
We were practicing.
Yeah. Bashkade Bajike, Dizokan, Ashmaro, Kishinakashin, Eagle River, Doshchin, Thunder Bay, Nuweekin, Fiorte, Otipimisawak, Lilu, Dodem. And that's a little bit of Michif. And then every time I do any kind of these things, I try and learn a little bit more Michif. I know it sounds a little bit like Cree because it's a coming together of Cree and French together. That's one of the Michif languages. There's different dialects, and that's the dialect that my family would have spoke. So what I said was Buffalo Spirit's my name. You can call me Ash Morrow. I am from Eagle River. I live in Thunder Bay, and I've lived here for like 19 years, so I'm pretty rooted, but I didn't say that mid-shift. I'm a super proud Métis, and Otipimisawak is a word that was given to the Métis people, or the Michif people, and it's a Cree word that means the people that own themselves, and it's my favorite Michif word. When I heard that word, I felt like, yeah, we are the people that own ourselves, and we're always fighting to be able to govern ourselves and to be able to, stand alone but with people. Wolf Clan is my clan, and that's So I'm so excited to have these conversations today about all of the different things that I've gathered along my path about being Métis, different teachings about being Métis. There's some that I wrote down the rules of the buffalo hunt because I didn't want to forget one. But I think those are really, really, really neat, important things. And I just got home last night from traveling around, visiting people, which is very much in line with Métis culture. We're traveling people. So within my little intro, even just Mashkade Bajike Dizokan, that's actually that's in Ojibwe, but there was a lot of sharing of language, because Métis people were the people that were traveling around, like kind of like business people, right? Mm-hmm. So we're traveling around. We had to know all the different languages. We had to speak all the different languages. So a lot of Métis people would, know Cree, know Ojibwe, know Soto, know all these different languages, because we were traveling around for the most part. And and I'm going to talk about that too, because there was like some distinct differences between some different Métis cultures too that I've seen, and like on my mother's side, I am Métis through the Red River line. So that is the homeland of the Métis. That's where the Métis. That was our first big community. That town was like 10,000 people strong of Métis people, and we all got kicked out. Wow. So, and we got kicked out to the outskirts. A lot of people moved up to like Saskatchewan region, Alberta region. People moved all over the place from there when they were kicked out. But there's also a lot of Métis people that come from the Great Lakes region that are less talked about. So there's buffalo hunting, and that's another thing too. We were called the buffalo hunters. We never hunted a buffalo. We were hunting bison. And I'll get into that with a story with an elder that was looking for a buffalo robe. And as a joke, I said, you know, could it be a bison hide? Because, like, as a Métis, you know? And, um, and yeah, she said absolutely because it's the same spirit. So yeah, so there's also another so buffalo hunting, Métis people from
Mm-hmm.
like that Red River region, and then there's also the voyageur people that were going on the waterways of the Great Lakes and were also traveling and doing the same thing but in a different line. So on my dad's side, I come from people that come from Petatinguishing, which were the original people of Drummond Island that were kicked off and moved to a different area again. They moved to Penetanguishing, whatever you want to say. But yeah, and so I really enjoy this, like going around and sharing what I know because I know sometimes when I've heard things that were Métis teachings, that were Métis stories that were passed on, it 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 um, it heals a part of me and it fills a part of my heart where I'm like, oh, that makes sense, or that's who I come from, and that's a story that comes from my people because I don't often hear those stories. They're not always. Readily available and the connections to culture are a little bit fractured sometimes because of having to hide our identity and there's a lot of having to hide our identity to try and survive. It's being in survival mode, right? So yeah. So I think one of the things that I really wanted, and I brought them today, and you can see that behind me are all these different sashes. And there was someone just when I first got here that was talking about wanting to maybe try and make a sash, which I say giver. I know people that do it. It is very hard. This is not a skill that I have acquired yet, but I one day I hope I am able to make my own sash. But and all the different colors of sashes and what those mean, and probably about maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago, I was able to learn a lot about the differences of the sashes. And what I learned was that there's a lot of misinformation. And so I'm gonna just show you the one I'm wearing. This one here, if you can see it. It's a purple sash. It's purple. It has blue and green. Oh yeah, I'm over here. Blue and green. It has all different colors, but it's very purple heavy. And I love this sash, and I was honored to receive this sash for doing two spirit work. So I went to
Oh.
Penetanguishing to a two spirit event, and I was a keynote speaker. And as a gift, they gifted me this really, really, really special two spirit sash that they don't make, they don't sell, they just made them for the purpose of honoring two spirit people. And so I couldn't even buy one if I wanted to. It's one that was you could only get if it's gifted, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those sashes are like that, where you can only get them if they're gifted. So this is a really really special sash to me, um, and I want to talk about how this is a modern thing. This having this sash be for a reason and for a purpose and for a specific person is like that is a modern thing because if you think about it, and I like to look at things practically, and so when you think of it back in the day, let's say let's say I am traveling, I am doing like you know the roles of a Métis person. Back in those days, you would have a cart and you'd be traveling around, and that cart was able, the wheels could come off that ox cart, and it could go through waterways, and you have all your stuff in there, and you're like a traveling salesperson. Okay, and so if I was a traveling salesperson, and I had a lot of red popular color. Look at how many things have red. They're easily seen. It's very flashy. A lot of people like the red. Let's say I'm going through Manitoba and I stop in St. Anne's, and all of a sudden, someone just comes up with so much shunya, and they're like, I want like this big bundle of red. Boof, gone. And then I go to St. Madeleine, and someone else buys. And I don't know if these communities are in order, but I'm just saying, like, if you go to these different Métis communities, or I'm going to these different towns and I'm selling these things, all of a sudden I have no red left, and now I'm crossing the what our today border is near Kenora, and all of a sudden, all I have is blue and yellows and greens left with some purples, and all of a sudden, someone at Kenora is like, you got no red? No, I sold out in St. Madeleine, but I have this nice blue. I have this nice blue, and I have this green. Look at that nice color green. Yeah, okay, I'll take that. I'll take a bundle of that. And all of a sudden, they take all of that, and then I keep traveling, and all of a sudden, I get to, let's say, Saskatchewan, and all they have left is greens and yellows and things like that, whatever's left over. So these were sashes were tools. They are more of a reclamation of culture and a statement today, but back then they were a tool, and there's about 100 ways I could tell you about how we could use a sash. So let's say you're traveling and there's no doctors around, there's no people around to help you. You fall. It was a hard job. It was a job that you had to prep. And there's a cool thing. Maybe we'll try and do it later, where if you weren't strong enough to, I'll just show. I can't do it, but I'll show you what it is, so you know what I'm talking about. And this was a really cool thing where when you were a youth, let's say maybe 13, 14, maybe younger, maybe 12 years old. If you were a youth and you were able to do this, you stand between this. I can't even get in here. I'm kidding. And you hold your foot up like this. If you're able to go all the way down and make this knee touch the ground and push yourself all the way back up without using your other foot or your hands to help you, you are allowed to go on a voyage, and you're allowed to go with everybody and go and sell goods and stuff like that, and be a part of that. You were gone for months. You wouldn't come home for months. And so if you weren't able to do that, then that meant that someone would have to be carrying your load. And so there was already enough loads to be carried, and you had to take care of yourself. So little things like that were implemented. And so the sash was a huge part of our culture, because if you fell and you twisted your ankle, or you fell and you cut yourself, this would easily be used to put compression over that wound and tie it and keep the if you fell and you ripped your pants, one of these threads were easily taken off and used to sew your pants. Carrying really, really heavy loads, your neck muscles are very, very strong, and so a lot of times those loads, you were carrying a canoe on top of your head with a bunch of other people, and these canoes were not like the canoes we have today. These canoes were huge, giant canoes that would carry like 2,000 pounds of goods. So you would have to take this, tie it, and then you would have your bundle of things around your forehead, and you would be carrying all this stuff on your back, and then you would be carrying a canoe. So you had to carry so much stuff to be able to do these. And if you've ever gone in the bush and portaged, it's like portaging. When you have to portage, everyone has to help, and everyone has to carry their own load. And the more times you have to go back to get more stuff, the longer your portage is, and the longer your journey is. And maybe some other Métis salesperson is going to get to that community before you. So everybody had to be very able to take care of themselves and be strong enough to do that. So it was used as a way of different ways like that. There's hundreds of ways. I could talk about the ways that you use the sash forever. But when I go into classrooms, and sometimes I'll have teachers go, "Can you please talk about the colors of the sash? Can you please talk about the importance of what the colors meant?" Because today there's contemporary things online that talk about, the blue being for the water, and the yellow being for the sunshine, the red being for the bloodshed and all of the battles, and all of the, how we fought, all these different things. And it's less of an actual indicator of those things. Traditionally, it wasn't. It was what you had at the time. It was using what you had, and the colors you had were the colors you had, and that's how you have all the different cool colors. If you look at this one, I can't even tell you what color this is. Is it green? Is it blue? Is it red? There's so many different colors in here. So these people used everything that they had, and that's another thing, is no waste. Métis, that's another part of our culture. No waste. You do waste nothing. I know for myself, when I'm making crafts and I'm doing things, the smallest pieces of thread, the smallest broken buttons, even if it's broken, I'll find a use for it. I'll find a way to use it, turn it into something else, find a new life for it, and be able to have it continue and have a life on a bag as some part of a some in some way, right? So that's another part is never wasting. So if you look, there's so many different colors here. There's not actually, like, if you were to say what color is this sash at a glance?
I see green.
There's a lot of green, a lot of green.
Yeah, but it's so intertwined together, right?
Yeah, and I love this sash just for the diversity. You don't often see this sash. The sash is like not one that you see often, and a lot of these are sashes you don't see often. And also, you have more of an indicator of where you come from. A lot of people think so. Modern days, the red sash has been adopted by the MMF in Manitoba. That is the Métis sash. That color has been adopted. So that one was like gone, and so Ontario Métis, where like look at a different kind of. So there's a different kind of sash. Where did I put that bag? There's a bag here I have with the other sash. Well, this. No, that's not that big. No, you know what? I'll just use this one. This is very close too. This one has a lot of blue in it. It's very dark. It might be hard to see with the bison hide behind, but it's a very, very blue one. And that's there's different, and also the different. So if you notice, I'm gonna pull this here and show you these two. That's okay. So if you look, there's different patterns, and so just like you look at beadwork and you look at different types of beadwork, you can almost look and see where that pattern comes from, what that flower comes from, what that design looks like. So, and someone posed this question on Facebook recently, and I think it was Shannon Gustafson asking about the like how do you recognize the difference in like Cree beadwork, I think she asked, to like Ojibwe beadwork, and there was so many answers, and I love going through that. And there's some really neat things that, like, for instance, Métis were the beadwork people, we were the flower beadwork people, and we were known for having flower beadwork, and so I have a huge love for flower beadwork. I have actually my whole arm is tattooed with flower beadwork, all different types of flowers that in Michif were called padula flowers. And what padula flowers are they are flowers that are not seen in nature. They are the unknown. They're the flowers that you are like, I can't really tell what that's supposed to be. It doesn't look like a rose. It doesn't look like a daisy. It doesn't look like something that I can actually identify. It's like a made-up flower that is just with beautiful colors with petals. You know it's a flower, but you can't really pinpoint what kind of flower it is. Just like a made-up flower. And so padula flowers I love because they're just so unique, and you see them a lot. And also a four-petaled flower. If you see a four-petaled flower, and I have one tattooed on my wrist, and everyone always asks me if it's a four-leaf clover, and I'm like, no, it's a Métis four-petal flower. And that was there was a back then a big distinction between the five-petal flower and the four-petal flower. A lot of times you would see things with a four-petal flower and go, that's Métis beadwork, because that was a big part of signature to our beadwork. Or if you see the white mouse tracks, that was a big signature to Métis beadwork. And if you don't know what mouse tracks are, when you see beadwork with like a vine that crawls around and there's flowers coming off of that vine all over the place, it was white, and it has a white like dot 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 dot, and then there'd be a couple dots on each side. Boom 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 boom. I hope you can read my hand signatures. But that was those were called mouse tracks, and that was also a big signature of Métis beadwork. And so, like, those were more indicators of where you came from, rather than the color of the sash that you had, where a lot of people think it has a lot to do with the color of the sash. So I always like to correct that misinformation. But today there are lots of different types of sashes that are for specific reasons and purposes, and for different. So like for instance, this sash here. This is my wedding sash. I got this made by Carol, the sash weaver in Winnipeg, who's super famous in the Métis community. Anyway, she does beautiful work, and these are my wedding colors that I got made for a wedding sash.
It's beautiful.
This one was made by a youth. It's black and green. this is the lightning bolt pattern. So that was one of the distinct patterns that you might be able to go, oh, that pattern, they probably come from this region, or they probably have spent a lot of time in this region. And that's another thing, because Métis people were traveling people that we were always putting things in our bundle. You go somewhere and you go, wow, that's a beautiful pattern. Can you share how you did that pattern with me? You know, and that person would share how they did that pattern, and they would start doing that pattern. And that pattern, now you would see that pattern all over the place. So eventually, those ideologies of where people would come from and looking at the different patterns of things would get a little bit murky, because now we're sharing that culture, we're sharing those patterns with people, we're sharing those things with people, maybe sharing the colors you had if you're going to be visiting, you know, hey, I see you have a lot of red, can I trade you some of my yellow? I really, really would love to have some red. Yeah, sure, chum, we'll trade. And you know, trading was a big part of Métis culture. And so when I do artwork and I do things, I would rather a trade if I'm making something. If someone is making something, I would absolutely rather honor that part of my culture and trade something. You know, rather than buy something.
So
Yeah.
I do have a question with one of
Yeah.
your sashes that I was looking at. So I was seeing like the balance, right, where you have the middle and everything seems to be in balance on the side. But this one has like a different track right here. So I was just wondering about that.
Very good question. So like I mentioned, these were tools, and sometimes these were used as a measuring tape. So you would have a different reason for what you would measure when you're trading. If you were going to trade something that you wanted so much of, you'd have to make sure you weren't gonna, you know, that someone wasn't cheaping out on you. Make sure you'd hold your sash up to it. Make sure you're getting enough what you're paying for, or making sure that the trade was fair. So a lot of the different patterns are purposeful in how far apart they are, or whatever reason they were for, because they were used as a tool, and that was a measuring tape. That was, and if you look at a child sash is a lot thinner too. So if you look, this is a child sash, so it's not as wide, let's say, as like this sash. So this sash you can see on either side of this one. Just when I hold it up, it's very, very much smaller. So different sizes of sashes, also the length of the sash, all different reasons for measuring or for using for different reasons. Yeah. Good question. Thanks. I might have forgotten that, so good question. There's so much to say that, you know, I don't want to forget something, but yeah. Oh, mouse tracks. I brought an example of mouse tracks. I painted this, and this is something that I like doing. So this is a record, and it's not a record I really liked. So I thought I'm gonna use it for something else, and I'm gonna put another life to it. And so I painted this. If you can, I'll come up a little closer so you can see it. But if you see the white, those are mouse tracks, and so that was giving a little tip of the hat to my ancestors that, you know, did the mouse tracks. Yeah. Hard to explain mouse tracks. I forgot I brought this. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Maybe I'll just like go through some of the things I brought.
I think
actually,
you have some.
Matasses were a really, really cool part that I've seen, and when I go to powwows, or when I go to events, I didn't. It's kind of hot in here. I didn't put them on, but these matasses would be worn here, like below your knees, and I'm gonna put beadwork on them, but I haven't yet. But they were for buffalo hunting. So people that were part of buffalo hunting would have these kind of things as, you know, good protection when you're shooting, when you're riding. So let's talk about the buffalo hunt a little bit, because I did bring those rules, and I think they're really neat. So the buffalo hunt had these rules. Let me get my little book. I didn't want to forget any. So the buffalo hunt. There was rules to the buffalo hunt, and if you can picture like 2,000 squeaky wooden ox carts rolling through the prairies, following the herd, looking for buffalo, looking for the herd. There was so the captains were the ones that were in the lead of the family groups, and so they would be a couple kilometers ahead of those real squeaky carts. They would be up ahead and they would be looking for the herd. And so the Métis symbol is like that infinity symbol, right? That everyone knows. And that infinity symbol has lots of different meanings to it. And the meaning we most often hear is that it's the combining of two cultures. It's the combining of mixed ancestry. So, and not just any mixed ancestry, specific mixed ancestry that comes from those communities. So, like someone today that comes from mixed ancestry wouldn't necessarily be Métis. That would be someone that would be maybe non-status. Maybe they would be something else. But to be Métis, you come from these distinct communities that had that distinct culture from back in those days. So, and there was a handful of last names that if you come from one of these last names, then you're Métis. So a lot of times people look at, well, you don't look, you look white. You don't look like you're half, right? And that's because I'm not half. That's because I come from a distinct lineage of people that were Métis people that had a different culture, a different language, a different way of being, and it's not a contemporary thing. It's something from, so these rules come from the 1840s, and it's from the first buffalo hunt, and it was the rules to keep everyone in order and to keep the buffalo hunt safe and to keep everyone, just to keep everyone safe. And so
were these rules, like, were they passed down from your family?
these rules were like governance rules that weren't a family rule. Mm-hmm. So these 2,000 carts, my family might have had like 5 carts out of the 2,000 carts, but it was an entire community of Métis people that would go hunt together. It wasn't just a small unit of people, it was an entire community. You would have, if you have 2,000 carts, you have at least 2,000 people with those carts, plus you have all the kids, plus you have the captain of the hunt that's not with the carts, that are 2 kilometers ahead, that are scouting and looking for the herd. So you would have huge communities of people going to hunt all at the same time. It was a big community event. People would, so things that would happen back on the carts were like sharpening of knives, getting things ready, like you had kids to take care of too. You had all these different things that you were doing. The people that were the buffalo hunters, like the shooters, they would be, like I said, 2 kilometers ahead, away from the squeaky carts. If you've been hunting, you'll understand why.
The tick-tick of the truck shutting down.
And so another really cool thing that people don't often know about the Métis symbol is that infinity symbol has another meaning. And when I heard this meaning, I thought, I wish people knew that. And so I'm so grateful to be able to share this tidbit that I found, because it really warmed my heart. And so the shooters, when they were up ahead, when they would see the herd, they would, they're on horseback, they would ride in a big figure 8. Sometimes they'd grab a little handful of dust and throw it up, and they'd ride in a big figure 8, and they would kick up as much dust as they could, because it's quiet that way. And then everybody 2 kilometers away could see that dust, and they'd go, oh, hunt's gonna happen soon. Everyone, get your knives, get ready. Everyone would start getting ready for the hunt, because they knew that hunt was gonna be happening soon. And so that was like one of the coolest things that I heard about the infinity symbol, was that was actually how you would kick up dirt when you would say, hey, and even to the point of, hey, I can see them, and they're like a kilometer away, or 2 kilometers, 500 meters away, was how big that radius of that infinity that they would ride in. So if it was a real tight one, maybe, I don't know what it is, but maybe that meant something different. That would mean it was not that far away. If it was a big one, they're far away, start getting ready, but we're not in a big rush. And so the rules to that too, all of those family units would have a shooter, and they would have people, like, they would have their own person. And so now, if you think of this, to be able to be a shooter, you had to be so talented. I don't know. I always envision myself as a two-spirit person and as a very masculine person. Like I would have been a shooter, you know. But I'm thinking about it and I'm like, I don't know if I could have been a shooter. Like that would be so hard, you know. Like you're riding on a horse with a saddle, not like you see saddles today. Like I've ridden horses before, and like I'm a Western rider because they got something to hold on to, even though you're not supposed to, you know. Like I would have, like that would have been so hard. So you're riding, you have a gun, you have to load that gun and then ride in with the herd. You can't be that far. You have to ride in with the herd and try and shoot a couple for your family to survive over the winter. And so like that buffalo has been so tied to my community of people, and like my ancestors, like they lived off of that buffalo meat, that dried meat, that pemmican. And as soon as the hunt would happen, all those people in those carts would be starting to prepare that pemmican and start to prepare that meat, feed the kids first, and like all these different things would happen. And so for me, anytime I go somewhere and I see bison on the menu, it doesn't even matter how they prepare it. That's what I'm gonna have, because I feel that's like my ancestry food that will fill my spirit. And the rules around it. So the rules, like you said, it wasn't passed down by family. It's very well known across all Métis families what those rules were. And so I'm wearing a black vest with some applique on it. Normally, it would have been like beadwork, like a black vest with beadwork, um, or what's it called? Embroidery, a lot of embroidery stuff like that. But the rules were, so no buffalo to be run on the Sabbath day, which is a Sunday. So a lot of Métis people come from ceremony and sometimes being Catholic, most of the time being Catholic, and a lot of Métis people I know were raised as Catholic and had ceremony as well. So no buffalo to be run on the Sabbath day, and that's because people wouldn't work on that day. So if you were running a buffalo, you shouldn't be working. Then who's gonna cut it up and who's gonna do the hides? Gotta start doing those hides right away. All that work would happen in the field. Um, no party to lag behind or go before without permission. Now there was a captain of the hunt of each party, but there was also one person that was the captain, the captain of captains, that would tell all the other captains that were running when to go. And so you had to listen to that captain, because that was for safety of your community. If you went before and other people weren't ready, you're only able to shoot a couple of bison. That means your community is not going to survive off those couple of bison. Hey, I wasn't ready yet. So everybody has to be ready to go. It's a very, very important part of the hunt. Um, no person or party to run buffalo before the general order. Oh yeah, that's number 3. So the general order was the captain of captains, that would say, okay, let's go. And that's when you would go, and that's when you would start running the herd. So every captain and his and when you look online it says men, but I want to make a little mention that there were women that were shooters as well. There were women that were two-spirit people that were shooters as well. So all those people were to patrol the camp every night and stay on guard. Those ones that were, and so how they would do that is living so closely to the bison, is that when bison are protecting the herd they form circles, and you see this all over the place. So there will be all of the cows and calves in the middle, and then all of the bulls will be on the outside, and they will protect and all the older ones will be on the inside. So Métis people realized that and would do the same thing when they were hunting. They would have the women and children and maybe the older people that were a part of that hunt in the middle, and all of the carts would be stacked around in a big circle. All the carts tuk, 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 all the way around, and all the people were inside from those carts, and then the people that were guarding would be outside of those carts and guarding from all types of things. Other people trying to steal stuff, wolves, all types of things. There could be all different reasons that you would need people to stand guard. And for the first trespass against these rules, you would have your saddle and your bridle cut up. That meant you're not able to join in. Now you are a part of the work party. Now you're not allowed to. This was if you did anything that was against those rules, you were just demoted. You didn't have to leave. You were just demoted to helping prepare the meat and helping take care of, the community and helping with the cart and stuff like that. For the second offense, their coat off their back was cut up. So your coat was a something that you wore with pride. It was something that was made from someone special to you. Maybe you're like someone in your family, or like someone close to you would have put a lot of effort, a lot of energy and love into that coat, and everyone wore those coats with a lot of pride. So they were like a nice leather coat with a lot of beadwork on it, often with lots of fringe, and that coat would be cut up. So you didn't want to, so it was their way of saying, listen, we mean business. Do not shoot first without saying, without the captain, a captain saying go. The third offense was the offender was flogged, and any thief that was brought to the, oh yeah, if you're a thief, you would be brought to the middle of the camp, and everyone would shout your name and say thief 3 times real loud, so everyone knew that you're a thief. And so being a part of that community and being an honest person and being a good person was really important, that to have everyone be safe in these big numbers of people, that everybody was going to be respectful of everyone else's things. You're going to be respectful of the rules and the order, to ensure survival over the winter. Because like I said, there was, like, we were kicked out of Manitoba, we were kicked out of Drummond Island, we were kicked out of all of the places that we settled. So we were kicked out and put into different kind of terrain that was harder to live on, and there was a lot of hard times. And so another thing too, like the this more happened in Saskatchewan. The people that moved to Saskatchewan was that they weren't allowed to live in the towns. They weren't allowed to live in the reserves. They were seen as they weren't allowed to live anywhere. They actually lived on the roadsides, on the road allowance, and they were called the road allowance people. And they lived in tiny little shacks, and they often worked for settlers on their farms. They often worked for other people, and a lot of those people, sometimes if things went missing in the communities, they would blame the road allowance people because they didn't have much, and they would go and set those little shacks on fire. And so a lot of those towns had a lot of hardships and stuff like that. And so a lot of those people kept moving. That wasn't safe, so they would move and find another place to live, another community to go and live in. And yeah.
So when we talk about community, right, and you're talking about how everyone had a role within community and what they're responsible for, I think it's amazing, like when you said, like, there was a captain and he had to say when to go, because you think if someone would shoot earlier, how those buffalo would just scatter, right, and go in all different directions, and you wouldn't be able to harvest that gift from that buffalo, of that meat and the hide of what you need for winter. So that makes sense that there would be one person that would need to ensure that that the community is working together. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a huge sense of kinship between those families too. And I know, for me, growing up, I grew up with a lot of aunties and uncles, cousins, that when I got older and I was like doing the math, the blood math, you're like, we're actually not related. I don't think we're actually related. Are we actually related? And so for me, that sense of community and that way of forming community, for me, was instilled in me when I was really young by my grandma, where that was my taunt, that was my aunt, those are my cousins. And when I grew up and I realized that they were just my grandma's best friends, they were really part of that kinship tie that we had. That thread in Métis people is really, really strong, of having that kinship tie. And so for me, as being a two-spirit person, that has helped me be able to survive and thrive and have that sense of family and community, where I don't necessarily have that biological sense of family and community. A lot of my family is chosen family, and a lot of people struggle with that sense of chosen family, but I feel like for me it's the same as real family, because I grew up with that sense of having that real family being kinship ties and having aunties and uncles and cousins and stuff like that. So it's not a far throw for me to have that that sense of family. Is it looks different, but to me it's not unfamiliar. Yeah.
I love that, like, that buffalo just brings everybody together, right? And those teachings that they bring with them. Are you able to, share any of the teachings that you have, like with the buffalo or the bison?
I absolutely can. I absolutely can. For sure, I can. So I actually carry the buffalo ceremony, which isn't a Métis ceremony, even though a lot of people think it is, because we're so tied to the buffaloes and Métis people are so tied together. It was a ceremony that was gifted to me by a Métis Two Spirit elder near near Toronto. I'm gonna grab this here just to show you a little bit about what it's about. I brought this just as a little show and tell. I love this. So the buffalo ceremony. There was an elder that was looking for a buffalo robe, and like I mentioned earlier, as almost like a joke, I because we were known for being the buffalo hunters and we're always hunting bison. I had I had reached out and I said, hey. So does a bison count or no? Because we're Métis people, and she chuckled and said, "No, yeah, absolutely it does. That's the same spirit." And I said, "Okay, well," I said, "Well, I've done a lot of hides in my life, and I've done never anything hair on, and never anything that big. I'd be willing to try." And there's a farm just outside of the city here in Thunder Bay we have a bison farm. I could see what they do with the hides, and so she said, "Great, that'd be great." So I reached out to the farmer, Tim, and I said, "Hey, is there?" And he goes, "Yeah, you perfect timing." He says, I have two for the price of one right now." I said, "Two for the price of one?" He said, "Yep, two for the price of one." He had to cut a little swatch off of one. For the university, they were doing some DNA testing, and he said, "So I have had to cut a little piece off of one, but it's only like 6 inches by 3 inches. A little piece. I mean, that's nothing. It's a 12 foot by 12 foot hide. That's nothing. That's great." So I went and I picked up those hides, and throughout having that ceremony, and I've had that ceremony. I think February 1st will be 4 years for me from carrying that ceremony. So I've carried it for a long time. I've learned lots of different things about buffalo um, and about that ceremony. And so one of the most interesting things that I've learned about that ceremony and about the bison is that the bison is the only creature on Turtle Island that faces a storm. Every other animal puts their side to a storm, and they tuck their face away. Like you'll see moose, deer, you'll see elk, you'll see all these bigger animals put their side to the storm, and a bison is the only creature that puts it head on, and wherever the storm is coming, they go head on. And when I was gifted that name, Buffalo Spirit, that was part of it. Was that I tend to go head towards a storm. If there's in a sense of community or advocacy or things like that, a lot of times when I see a problem or I see something that needs to be addressed, sometimes the first one to put my head into the storm. And so that ceremony, if you aren't familiar with that ceremony, is a ceremony for the survivors of people that have had someone pass away by their own hand. And so by saying that could be suicide or overdose or alcoholism or in all different ways. It's a very heavy topic of a ceremony, but it's a very uplifting ceremony. Usually people leave laughing and hugging and having a great time, and it's a very beautiful release of a ceremony where a part of that ceremony is about when when you're born through the east, and when you pass away, when you go through the west, like through the west door. And when you pass away in that sense, you don't necessarily go through that west door. And so the ceremony sends this bison out to open that door for people. And so the bison has been a part of my culture and a part of a lot of people's culture forever. Ever since my culture was birthed, this has been how we've survived. And so, and through, like I said, having no waste, having this hide. If you're like, how warm is that hide you're sitting on? It's radiating heat. I can feel it. I can feel it from here. It's so warm. It would be used for wrapping around your teepees or your prospector tents. It would be used as your bedding. It would be used for your clothing. You would survive off the meat all year long. None of that went to waste. All of it was used. um, the bones used as tools. And I know today I like to practice that today, where I have no waste when I'm hunting and I'm trapping. I have no waste. There's every little morsel piece of everything is used for something, because I you need it's a part of my culture that you honor that animal to the fullest. You don't waste anything, because if you were wasting, you didn't have room to waste. There was no room for waste. And so that was a big part of survival, a big part of how we were as people, is never have any waste. And so there's a neat story, and I've heard this story in three different ways, and I'll share it. And it's about the buffalo. And if we know our seven sacred teachings, the buffalo represents respect, and there's a reason for that in this ceremony of why that is part of why it is respect, that this is what this animal holds. um, and so the story goes, and like I said, I've heard it three different ways with three different birds, and the way that the story was told to me, it resonated most for me with magpies, because that reminds me of my family in Manitoba, and it reminds me of there you see a lot of magpies in Manitoba and stuff like that. But I've also heard the story with ravens. I've heard it with crows. But the story goes, the bison looked at humans very pitifully and thought, wow, they really can't survive without us. They're always eating us, they're always using us, and not just bison, but all creatures, right? They were using hunting and needing to use them to survive, and they can't even survive on their own, you know? I think we should just do them in. And that was what the buffalo had said. I think we should just get rid of humans. And for me, the way I tell the story is with the magpie. The magpie said, "Well, you're not creator, and I don't think you have the right to say how someone lives or how they stay here. They're made for a reason. Creator put them here. You're not creator." And the bison said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know. But look at them. They're pitiful. They don't even have hair on their bodies. Like, we have winters. They're not going to be able to survive. We should just do them a favor and just do them in." And the magpie said, "Well, how about we do this? How about we race? We'll race around the world 4 times. You, me, and the humans. And whoever wins the race gets to decide." And the bison, or the buffalo, knowing that they were the fastest, the strongest, they could withstand any weather, they were like, "Yeah, let's do this. Let's do it." Because they knew they were being a little conceited. They figured they were going to win. The magpie, they're a bird, so they're very fast. They can fly up high, and they can go fast as well, but only if the wind is in their favor. So they were going and flying, and the bison were going, it's funny. I told this story in Kenora not that long ago, but when I tell the story, I say, like, the bison were already halfway around the world, and humans were barely in Kenora. So I had to change my story and go, they're barely in Winnipeg, when I told it the other day. So the humans they're barely in Kenora, and the bison was, they're already halfway around the world, and the magpie is not far behind that, and they were winning. And so they come around to their fourth lap, and the magpie realized that the bison's probably going to win. Um, now, if you see in sometimes pictures, you'll see a bison with a bird on the back haunch, and that haunch is that beautiful long piece of fur right beside you, or right here. This beautiful woolly kind of piece here. Sometimes you'll see a bird perched on the back, and so the magpie hid out. It hid out on that back haunch of the bison, and it figured that the bison was going to win, and the bison was going to win. And so the magpie hid, and as soon as the bison was going to cross and win, that magpie jumped up and swooped in and won, and said to the bison, I did that because it's not our, like I said, it's not our place to decide what creation stays and what creation doesn't stay. That's not our place. It's like this is creator's creation, and so it's not up to us. And the bison slash buffalo, same, felt so bad that it gave itself to humans. It gave itself to humans in, like I said, like in food, in clothing, in bedding, kept us warm, tools. It gave itself to us and even in spirit. And so that buffalo ceremony, even in spirit, it's a very, very amazing, uplifting ceremony. And I'll bring this closer. I didn't bring this part of the bundle, but there's a skull, and there's ribbons that are attached to the skull. And on the bottoms of the white ribbons is where you would write the person's name that you're honoring, and the day or the year, whatever. If you don't know the day, that's fine. But the day or the year that they had passed away by their own hand, and you hold these with intention, and you put all of your good thoughts. You don't want to spook away that bison, so you got to put all your good thoughts. Maybe I always suggest that people think of an inside joke or a laugh or something funny, something that will really, really, really tell that bison in spirit who you're looking for and who they were to you. And so you do that, and you hold this with intention, and then you tie those ribbons on the skull, and those ribbons stay on the skull for 1 year. And for that year, it doesn't mean that it takes a year for the spirit of the bison to go and find those people, because the bison finds those people and opens the door in the west for them and lets them through. And that spirit, that spirit of it's very sticky. That the spirit that took those people is a very sticky spirit, and sometimes a lot of people in the community can struggle with negative thoughts, and they can struggle with having a hard time. Family members, friends, communities, and so what it does is we ask that spirit to leave those communities, and not to go to a different community, but to just go away and just to leave those communities. And so the bison in spirit, even in spirit, is our number one shkabe that helps us open that door and go through that west door. And so I'm very honored to carry that, especially for this community, because our community struggles with that a lot. And the first time I had this ceremony, I was instructed that I would normally, this ceremony, you have it. Some people have it once a year, some people have it twice a year, but it's a Sundance ceremony. It's a midday ceremony. You can have that ceremony in the fall and in the spring, and so for me, this ceremony would be. She had said you should, because of where you live, maybe have it on every change of the season.
Okay.
Have it 4 times a year,
times.
and I said okay. We'll have it 4 times a year, or when it's requested.
Okay, so our community members are asking what shkabe means.
Oh, a helper. Shkabe, like a helper. So it's our biggest helper. So this is they help us survive the winter. They help us with tools. They help us in spirit. So yeah, so they're our biggest shkabe that help us get through all of the different hard times we have in life, because they are that totem of respect, and they help us. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, Miigwech, for sharing that beautiful story.
Yeah.
And I know I was looking at the thunderbolt, right? The lightning strike.
Yeah.
And I see it, like you were explaining on the sash too. Can you explain a little bit more about that lightning bolt, or is there any?
Yeah. So when this story was passed to me by that elder, they were in Sundance, and there was a story about the lightning bolt when it hits the tree, and for them, when they were sundancing, that lightning bolt, it was thunder and lightning the whole time that they were sundancing for pretty much those whole 4 days. And so that elder said to me, when you said that you should make something to identify yourself as holding this for community. So when you're out, people know, and I'll tell you, I am still learning about this ceremony, and I'll always be learning about this ceremony. I'm always learning. But this ceremony, when I first had this first ceremony, there was people that came from, the first time I held it was at the Confederation College for a sacred fire, and it was the first day that I had my bundle complete, and all of a sudden there was a sacred fire. Oh, I love hearing a train. I hope you can hear it in there too. I love hearing the train. So there was this sacred fire, and I called that elder and I said, "Oh, I've never had a ceremony yet." I said, and I'm feeling like I should should I bring this bundle to that sacred fire? Is this something I would do? And so she said, if your spirit's calling you to bring that to that sacred fire, absolutely. Find the elder that's running it, and just maybe ask permission, and always walk with intent. And I said, yeah, for sure. And I went and I did that, and the elder had never heard of a buffalo ceremony, and didn't know where to put me, but said, well, I know the buffalo sits in the west, so maybe you should go sit in the west. I said, okay, great. So I got my bundle and I put it out in the west, and that person that sacred fire was for was someone that had actually um, walked to the Matheson Sundance near Timmins, had walked there for suicide awareness, and was a huge advocate of ceremony and Sundance and stuff like that, and 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 they had actually dragged the buffalo skull, which isn't typical for women to do. It's a special Sundance when women are allowed to do that, and so I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of that when I went to the sacred fire, and all of a suddenly, all these people from all over the place, from all over Ontario, showed up to honor this beautiful spirit that we had lost, and they were they were her Sundance family, and they came and they right away took Sema and they put it on the skull, and they put Sema on the hide, and they hugged the hide, and they put their tears on the hide, and they told me so much about the ceremony because it comes from Sundance, and I didn't realize how, and that in that moment I realized I always questioned, as a Métis person holding on to a ceremony like this for community, I always struggled with, am I the one to hold this as a Métis person? This is a Anishinaabe ceremony, and I felt a little bit like an imposter for a long time. Like, am I the one? Should I be giving this to somebody else? And in that moment, when everyone came, I knew that I was meant to hold this ceremony for community, and I know I do it in a good way because I overthink everything. So I'm always making sure that I do things in a good way, and like if I take the ceremony to another place, there's different protocols everywhere you go. So when I take the ceremony to a different place, I always reach out to an elder from that community and just say, hey, is there any different protocols? And actually, there was a different protocol, and so I reached out. I took this ceremony for the first time because I'm from Eagle River, like I mentioned. So Dryden is where I grew up, and that's the high school I went to. And I had a lot of people that passed away that way in my circles, and that's actually the reason why I moved to Thunder Bay, was a fresh start from that. So I moved to Thunder Bay, and when I went, I really wanted to bring this ceremony home. So I brought the ceremony home, and I reached out to Ron Indian Mandaman, and he's now passed away, and he had a midday lodge, and he had this ceremony at his lodge for the spring and fall gathering that he had in Shoal Lake. So I reached out to him because he was the only one I knew that had any knowledge of this ceremony, and I just said, hey, I'm bringing this to Dryden. Is there anything different that I do for protocols for the region? Because this ceremony came to me from someone that's from Toronto, and they were handed this ceremony from someone near Timmins. I said, so I just want to make sure I'm doing everything in a good way, and I have spiritual permission, to come in and offer this ceremony to community. And he said, well, tell me what your ceremony looks like. So I went through what the ceremony looks like, and I told him everything I did. And when I got to the end, so I mentioned these ribbons, I keep them on for 1 year, and it doesn't mean it takes a year for that person to go through the west door, but it means that after a year, the job is for sure done, because that person walked through all 4 seasons, and so you want to leave these on for all 4 seasons before you put them in a sacred fire, was my teaching I was given. And when I got to that part, Ron went, ooh, I wouldn't do that to them. And I went, ooh, what do you mean? He goes, ooh, we don't do that with the ribbons. When the ribbons are laid to rest, we tie them in trees. We walk them in the bush as far as we can go where they won't be disturbed, and we tie them in the trees. I said, oh, okay. And I thought maybe that was a little bit of an adaptation for someone in Toronto. I can imagine how long you would have to walk in Toronto to find an area of trees that would never be disturbed. You'd be, I don't know how far, you'd probably have to walk all the way to Thunder Bay. So, there's been a little bit of adaptations for this region that I've put in my bundle from other elders that have given me suggestions. Um, and like for when we do have a sacred fire when I do have the ceremony happening, that everybody walks counterclockwise to honor, the people that have passed, and offering your sema from the west side instead of the east side, and little different adaptations for the ceremony. But as a Métis person, I know carrying the ceremony, just doing the hide, for me was so healing, and I felt like I was so connected to my ancestors when I was scraping that hide. With every scrape, and I had wonderful people around me. I had Jean Marshall, reminded me, make sure you take care of yourself. Make sure you eat when you're doing that, because I have a tendency when I get into doing something, I just go and go and go and go until I'm like, wow, I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day. I've been out here before the sun was up, and I've been working all day, so making sure I took care of my body, making sure that I asked for help. That's really hard for me. Asking for help, and I think it's hard for a lot of people asking for help. Make sure you ask for help, things like that. And so Jean Marshall was just an amazing friend. I love Jean Marshall so much. Just coming in and checking on me, seeing how I was doing, offered a frame that could fit this hide, because I didn't have any frames big enough, because it was 12 feet by 12 feet, and I know right now I could put my arm span, and you're like, that's not 12 feet. I know math, but it shrunk, significantly shrunk. As it dried, it shrunk so much. But it was 12 feet by 12 feet, and it was. It's funny, when I showed up to pick up the frame, Jean says, "Chum, how are you gonna get that out of the truck? Do you have someone at your house to help you?" And I thought, "What do you mean? How am I gonna get it out of the truck?" She goes, "How'd you get it in the truck?" I picked it up and I put it in the truck. What do you mean? And that was a part of how I knew I was meant to carry this ceremony, was everything came very easily to me, like bizarrely easily. Like it took me 4 days to do this hide. It was the first one I did. It took me 4 days. It was probably minus 20. I frost scraped it. And with every scrape, it was really, really amazing just to like the processing inside my head, and the healing that happened when I was doing this. This hide will always be a part of my bundle, and when I pass away, it'll go to someone very special, because it has so much of me in it, and so much of community's energy in it too. Another thing that was mentioned was that this animal's the strongest animal we have on Turtle Island. It's very strong. It can take all the crying, all the tears, all the things that might happen in ceremony. It doesn't always happen, but what might happen, it can take all of that. But you also have to show it balance. You have to bring it around laughter. You have to bring it around good times. You have to bring it around amazing people like you, and share about it. I bring it into schools. I let kids crawl all over it, and play on it and touch it, and share the different things that I know about it, because that's what it's meant for, is to be a teaching tool too for community. And yeah.
So the fur tanner in me really wants to flip the
Don't
hide
do
over.
it. No. So you know what? You can see all of my work, and I know I could have done more work to it. And I know this one, if we flip this, is very soft. I don't know if you can see it. It has a very nice color. It looks like soft leather. You could probably fold it like a blanket.
Yes.
This is not like that. This is very, very very rigid. It's more like a carpet, and it wasn't meant for me. The intention for my ceremony wasn't meant for being able to fold it up or put it on a bed or have it like any part like that. It was meant to be rolled out and have people kneel on it, and it was a lot more rigid. Before, when I would roll this, it was like this big around. It was so, I probably could have went a little farther. with it, but I scraped all the membrane off. But there's not the act of like rubbing it and like softening it. I didn't do a lot of softening to it, but throughout ceremony, the amount of people that kneel on it and lay on it, and the kids playing on it, you'd be surprised how soft it's come. It's come. It's come so far with being so much softer than it was, just with the amount of people that have been on it. But when I look at the back of it, this is the first one I've done. It is the teaching one. You can see a lot of my scrapes. You can see some darkness on it too. You can see where I could have went farther, but in the moment you can't see that when you're scraping in it, frost scraping. I had Andrew Mandamin come. I just love that guy. Andrew Mandamin. When I thought it was done, I was like 4 days, and I said, Jean, I think I'm done. She was like, Chum, I don't know. That's a really big hide. Have you had any help? And I was like, well, my kid helped me for like an hour, and she was like, you're probably not done. I'll send Andrew. He lives in town. I'll send Andrew Mandamin to see if he can come and look at it, and see how and especially for hair on. I've never done that hair on, and it was a completely different process than any hide I've ever done. It wasn't as thick as I thought it would be. You'd think an animal that tough, you'd think it'd be real thick hide. It wasn't that thick, and actually in that big haunch, I poked through a few times and had to sew it. So it was thinner than I thought it would be. It acted differently, and even if it was -25, as soon as the sun touched it, boom, it was bouncing and it wasn't frost scraping anymore. So Andrew Mandamin came over, and he's touching it, and he goes, yeah, I don't know how you did it, but yeah, you're done. It's done enough. If you want it done, it's going to be, if you want to soften it, and from here in is all softening work, but it's done being scraped. And so, yeah, it wasn't long after that where I got the skull, and I brought it to that first ceremony. It was in March. Oh, I think it was March 5th. It was early March. It took me a long time, and so many people came to help me. When I took that feed on, everyone came to help me. There was Richard Wesley from like somewhere near Timmins. He offered his grandma's recipe for like not brain. It wasn't brain that I used, but it was like the braining mixture. And I did that, and he goes, I don't even know how many times to do it. You do it 4 or 5 times on a moose hide, but for I don't know how no, and everything is. I was doing this with no one being able to come and really, like, he's in Timmins, he can't come and look, right? Also, re-soaking it, I was nervous to re-soak it. I didn't want the hair to slip. Sometimes when you re-soak a hide, the hair comes off, and sometimes that's a good thing because you want to make leather and you don't want the hair on it, but I was doing it hair on. So I was nervous to soak it. I was nervous to do things like that. And I'll tell you, this hide, because I like I mentioned, I had 2 hides. This one, completely different, acted completely different from the second one I did. It was like I was learning all from scratch. It was completely different. And so when he offered his grandma's recipe, that was just amazing. And everything, I was a learning experience. It acted like soft wax. So as soon as I would smear it on the hide, it would like harden. So I had to work fast, so I thought, I'm going to get a crock pot and keep it warm because it was starting to get cool on me. So, it was really a beautiful, it was a beautiful time of learning for me and my family. I had everyone help. My wife helped, my kids helped. Everyone was, either helping helping me by sharpening tools or showing me how to sharpen my tools better. There's always room for learning, and I'm sure there's always things I could still be learning. I'm not a pro at sharpening tools, but I know how to get it just right so I can at least keep scraping.
So when you're putting on like that acting agent for the softening, right, that they had used, were you just like rubbing it in, or did you have like a specific bone tool that you were using, or?
I laid it out on my basement floor. I was on my hands and knees, and I had gloves on because I'm got some sensitive skin. So a part of that acting agent was laundry soap, but bar soap, and you grate it like cheese. And there's also oatmeal and lard and all these different things that you use to make that sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was rubbing it in with my hands and rubbing it in with the heel of my hand and really pushing it in. And then you would let it set, and then you would use a tool and scrape it off. And then after you'd scrape it off, you have to make a new batch, and then you rub it on again. And then what I did was I in my basement I made these big hooks because from stretching it there's holes in the edges and I didn't cut those off, so there's holes in the edges that I could hang it up, and then I would I would let it just sit there and let it cure and let it really 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 soak in. And I found spots I had poked through I didn't know about because I would look on the other side and I'd have that acting agent in the hair and it would make the hair slip. So I would have to go through and like seal those off a little bit and be careful around those areas. And when I was scraping it off, I had to kind of be extra careful. And then it's dry now. It's dry and it's hard. So all the ripples in it were harder to scrape over. I had to be a little more careful. You know, it's not as thick as moose hide. It's a lot thinner. So yeah, it was a really big learning experience for sure.
So when we're doing moose highs, right? Because I'm a moose, um, like I myself do some moose
Yeah.
scraping, right? So if we're thinking like your buffalo hide is stretched out and you're scraping, like what are you thinking? Like how are you taking care of yourself as you're, working with this beautiful hide and, and having to be extra careful with trying to keep that,
Well,
like the fur on,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, keeping for me, anytime I do something, especially if it's something for community or if I'm making food or if I'm doing something for somebody else, I'm always conscious of what's going on upstairs. When I say upstairs, I'm like, up here upstairs. I don't want to be putting that negative energy. So I don't want to be like frustrated when I'm doing it. So when I would be scraping and my muscles were hurting and like I said, I have a hard time asking for help. I had a really hard time stopping and taking a break. But once I noticed myself getting frustrated, I would poke through. And I was like, oh, time to take a break, time to feed myself, time to go inside and warm up, time to, really being. And so a couple times when I popped through, I was like, okay, slow down. You got to just slow down and enjoy this process. It's not a rush. It's not a rushing thing. This is for community. I got to be. So anytime I was getting frustrated, I know for me that was a big process. Okay, I gotta stop. I gotta just go inside, have some food. Take care of myself. Always being mindful of that, and also letting my mind run because I was processing so much. It was so healing for me to be, the things I was thinking about were the buffalo teachings I was thinking about. I was thinking about my ancestors and how they would be doing this, and I was thinking about, I think I got it bad doing this. They were doing this, and like they might not have had a rope and a stretcher and all these things I could just go buy at a store. Now how would they be gonna? They would have had to have processed the wood and like all the rope and things like that. Like all these things would have had to have been made. Um, Making sure I did things like when I was preparing my rope that I was doing not cutting any corners. And I think that's a big part of it. You can't cut any corners. You gotta stop. You gotta burn the ends. Just like with my ribbons, when I do my ribbons, you gotta burn the ends. You gotta be really mindful of doing things in a good way. And because it's for community, you don't want to have that frustration energy. You don't want to have that. I'm cold and I'm out here and I'm kind of miserable. You gotta keep yourself in good spirits and make sure you eat. I know Jean made me a beautiful loaf of really high energy, seedy, healthy bread, and I had that every day that I worked on it, and I felt like that was good medicine for me. It was like I looked at it like it was medicine. It wasn't just nourishing myself. It was like, no, this was made by one of my good friends in a really good way with really good intention, and a lot of love went into this bread, and with eating this bread I'm now having that in me too, right? And that, so yeah, being really mindful of those things for sure. Yeah.
So when you were like historically, when we're done like working on these hides together as a community, how did they like help their sore muscles, because like you said, like you're constantly
Yeah,
moving
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this. So yeah, and not only with working on hides, also like if you look at like the voyageurs when you're portaging. Have you ever portaged?
Yes.
Oh, God, I figured. I know. That was a good one to ask. Yeah, so portaging, if you don't know what that is, that's when you're like in a canoe or sometimes even a boat, and you want to go from one body of water to another body of water, and there's a piece of land in between. You got to pick everything up and walk it over. Sometimes you got to do a couple trips, and you're walking over, maybe paths that other people have walked over, but trees fall. You got to cut trees down. You got to clear the path. There's a lot of work that goes into it. And also when you're in a canoe and you're portaging too on that side of Métis, you got to do a lot of work too. Sometimes you got to get out and walk the canoe when the waters are rough. You can't just stop. You got to keep moving, right? So a lot of people, what they would do, and this is where jigging comes in. This is where fiddle playing comes in. And I have my bundle here. I don't know if you can see it. I can kind of see it. Every time I bring my bundle out, people ask me, is there a fiddle in there? Are you going to play us a tune? And it's not a fiddle, it's a fiddle case. It was my great-great-great-grandfather's fiddle case that I instead of having it up on a wall or somewhere and never touching it or using it, I use it as my traveling bundle when I come to do things like this. I like to keep it in active use, and I like to bring it around. So fiddling is that's where fiddling, spoons, these are all parts of Métis culture, and it was whatever you had. It wasn't just like spoons. It was like making sound. Clapping is sound. Stomping is sound. Different ways of making sound. Things that you would do. People would make, would play music, and when everyone was done, there was always a big feast. You got to take care of yourself. You got to eat. You got to, but what happens when we do hard work, or anyone that works out or does, has an active, like a laborious job or something, after work, what happens? Oh, I sit down and I can't get up again. My feet hurt. My back hurts. Oh, once I sit down and I take my shoes off, I want to get up. And Métis people recognized that wasn't practical. You have to get up. You have to keep moving, and you have to cool down your muscles. When you work out and you work hard all day and you're doing that work and you're putting your body through all that strenuous labor, you have to cool it down. You can't just work hard and then shut it off. You got to take care of your body, because you have months and months and months of working hard, of portaging, doing hard work, carrying things over your head, all these muscles that you're using. You have to make sure that you are going to continue, doing that work the next day. You can't just have, oh, my muscles hurt, I can't do it tomorrow. You can't there's no days off, you can't just call in sick,
Yeah.
So what they would do is they would, everyone would get their instruments, people would jig. There's all these really awesome jigs, and there's different types of jigs, and I'm going to show you the ones that I know.
Okay.
And you know what, let's do, because I have all these sashes, we may as well do the sash jig.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're at home, like, feel free to get up and move around and try this out with us. I've never done this before.
It's okay. I'll take it easy on you. We'll just do a couple steps. I'm going to take my shoes off. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is, are we able to...
Can we move that?
Yeah? Okay, great. Great. I'm going to grab this sash. So, because, like we talked earlier about the Métis symbol being the infinity symbol, this symbol, do we have a volunteer in the room that can help us for one that has 3? Where did Freedom go?
Oh,
We'll do free. Well, you know what? We'll see if Freedom wants. We'll do the sash dance first.
Okay.
And then I'll show you the butterfly dance, because
Okay.
it's a really cool one with sashes as well.
I really want to see if I'm strong enough to go down.
Do it. Yeah, do it.
See if my 90s days is coming back.
So yeah, what you would do is you would just take one step over, okay, and you would use this to hold your foot up, to help yourself hold your foot up, and now you would bend all the way down and let your knee touch the ground.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It's hard, right?
It's so
I
hard.
know. I gotta do some gotta work out. I gotta get ready for that. So, with jigging, what I like to when I go into classrooms, and we're not gonna get into like fancy footwork or fancy songs or fancy things like that. We are just going to just do a couple of the easy steps.
Okay.
So a lot of this. So this is one that I like to show first, and it's like, and it's a lot of heel scuffing. So a lot of heel scuffing back or heel scuffing forward. But it almost, if you've ever like seen anyone tap dancing or anyone doing kind of like that, and these steps come from the Celtic culture of like Scottish Irish, because there was not just French people that were a part of that. There was Scottish, Irish. There's a whole Michif language that was a part of the Scottish language as well. So instead of French and Cree, it was Scottish and Cree, and so that's why there's different Michif languages too. So this is. Do we have clappers or music or something for some beat? Okay, so let's do this. What we're gonna do. This was a fun one. So there was a dance that was the sash dance that would go like this, and this comes from the sword dance, and I love playing this with kids because they have fun with it. So the sword dance traditionally was two swords that would go like this, and you would dance around them. And I always laugh. I'm like, the object of this game, it's like a game dance, is that you can't touch the sash. You have to jump over and then jig, and then jump over and jig, and then jump over and go around and jig. And so the point of it is everyone's in a circle. Imagine our whole community standing all around us in a big circle, clapping and getting ready and encouraging you to do a good dance, and so you would be working these muscles, the calf muscle, your leg muscle, all these muscles, because these are the ones that were working it out when you were portaging, and it was really strenuous labor, right? So with the two cultures that come together, this half, if you see like Irish, Scottish step dancers, or they would have their feet going so fast, and what the upper body part was like this, super, super rigid and didn't move, and it almost looked like the top part of the body wasn't moving and the bottom part was just like going like that, right? And so so Métis people took that bottom part of that dance and adopted it into their dances, and the top part of the dance is more adopted from like the Cree, Anishinaabe, like having more free form. You can do whatever you want with your top half. The bottom half is doing the jig, and this is how and so, are you ready?
Oh, I don't know. I think I had too much coffee.
So what I like to show with kids, you can see my feet. So there's a little hop, skip, and a step, right? And there's no wrong way to jig. There's lots of different types of jigs. So the easy one that I do with kids is a ba-dump. Yeah. So yeah, and then you go the other side, ba-dump, 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 and you can go back and forth, and then you start going. And that's just a really, really simple one. And so what you can do is when you put your foot out and you do your little scuffle with your foot, you can do your little scuffle thing to the side. You can do that to the back side. You can do that to the front. And it's just, you're just dancing however you want to dance. But that's the basic kind of a step. A lot of it too was like a scuffle, like a quick step back. That. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get some clappers. Thank you so much.
I hope you all are joining us at home.
I hope you're joining us too. Yeah. So imagine there'd be fiddles, there'd be spoons, people would be playing spoons, there'd be fiddles, there'd be all kinds of, Ooh, you're fast.
Forward?
No, you're okay. Yeah, and then you would jump over. And if you touched the sash, you're out.
Oh my goodness, we missed that.
So yeah, if you touch the sash, you're out of here. Someone else jumps in. So yeah, that was a really, really, that's one of my favorite ones to show to show kids when I go in. And it's fun to see how everyone has their own adaptation. When kids come in and they're doing their little dance, some have like the most amazing footwork, and they try to do all the four sides and stuff like that. And it's awesome to see. It's just really awesome to see kids enjoying that part of it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so are we going to learn the butterfly one now? Can one of you?
Can we have one?
join us?
You know what? I will even let you be the hub.
Oh.
And the hub is the easiest one. So, well, it's not really yeah, we'll see. So what this is this dance gives homage or tribute to that infinity symbol. And so what we're going to do, because we got a short space, you're going to hold half of this. And you're gonna, here, I'll even put a little knot in there for you. Okay. Okay, and you can hold the knot on one side. Okay. Knot on this side. So just like a wheel of an ox cart, okay? Like a wheel of an ox cart, they go around. There's always a hub in the middle of the ox cart. Thank you for being our hub, keeping us together. So what we're gonna do is, so you're gonna follow whoever's moving first. So I'm gonna go first. Okay. I'm gonna just do the motion without jigging. Okay. I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna go under. You're gonna follow. You're gonna follow, yeah, follow. Okay, and now your turn, Laura. You go under, and you go back to your place. And if we were doing this in the grass, or if we were doing this dance in the sand, when we were done dancing, there'd be a big infinity in the ground, because we're going in that butterfly kind of thing, right? So this is one of the cool dances. It's one of my favorite ones with kids, and kids love this one. And so what you do is, the one on the hub does the fancy footwork, and we do the fancy footwork too. But it's hard when you're moving fast to do that fancy footwork and to move fast. So what we do is, as you go, these get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and when they're so short and tight, then you're done. Like they go faster and faster and faster, because you're getting closer and closer and closer. We have a limited space, but these would be longer, and you would be holding a bigger arch for someone to go under,
Okay.
and to not run into each other,
Yeah.
So let's move up a little tad, get you in the middle a little bit. Okay. All right, so I would go under like this. We'll try and do it. Yep. And I go.
Oh yeah, look at them turning. They're
Yep.
twisting.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
Now, do I wait till you get there, or do I just keep the...
We just keep it going.
Keep it
If we
going.
can keep it going fluidly, we keep it going fluidly.
Okay, I am glad that
Yeah.
you're in the middle.
Yeah.
I would have already messed this up.
Yeah, and that is the butterfly dance.
Oh, I've only ever seen this on TV when festival season comes up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll be doing the classrooms every time I go and do my Métis 101.
You can
Yeah.
really feel how, like, that infinity
Yeah.
happening, right, as you're going. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. It
And
takes
it's-
three.
And it's really hot in this prospector tent. Like, Freedom's got the wood stove blazing for
Oh,
us.
I know. When you were like ready to jig, I was like, okay. Oh, it is warm in here. That is for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if we want to open it up, if anyone has any questions for Ash.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
questions. Yeah.
Any thus far.
No questions so far.
So does
That's okay.
anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask? You can just put it into the chat.
So maybe what I'll talk about a little bit about is one thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned as a two-spirit Michif person is about language. And you said merci, and I was like, yeah, merci. I love that. Because language, there's not a lot of language speakers left. It's been a very, very hidden language, and if you could speak French, like you only spoke it in the home when no one was listening around. It was a very thing that was spoken in the home because it was something you would hide. And so with that, it's very close to extinction. But there's a huge resurgence of language language people that are doing moving mountains with language. So like Samson La Montagne. These are just people that I know offhand. I did a course, and it was just basic Michif, and for someone who knows French, because my grandma and my grandpa were French, and my grandpa didn't even speak English really. He spoke mostly French. It was really hard knowing French because a lot of it sounds like broken French, and so it's this broken French kind of a sound, and a lot of it sounds like Cree. Like I remember one time when I first learned how to introduce myself, I was around a fire with some of my friends, and I said what did I say? Tanshe Kiawao. I was like, hello everybody. And I said my name, and so when you say my name is in Ojibwe, correct me if I'm wrong, or if I say it differently, it's Dishnakashin. Natishnakashin. Nadishnakashin. And no, say it. Nadishnakaz. Thank you, because I get it mixed up now because it sounds very close. So when you say it Michif, it's Dishnakashin, which is like very, very, very close to sounding like Cree when you say it in Cree. And so language is a huge important piece of me reclaiming my culture, is that language piece that was lost. And there's a few people that are doing, there's like, and usually they're in Saskatchewan, so the time change is different. So if I want to take a class, it's like 10 o'clock at night, it's like a way different time. But there's a huge resurgence of language, and that's where I'm putting a lot of my energy these days. Is that I'm really thirsty for learning that, and I'm really wanting to be able to speak with some fluency. I'll never be a fluent speaker because it's not a mother tongue of mine. Like it's not something I've ever spoke or heard my family speak, but it's the language that my ancestors spoke. So I really, really want to have that language piece come back to me. And there's a story, and the story was from Kai Manouche Pyle, who is also moving mountains with language. And if you notice, I didn't in my intro say that I was two-spirit, because there's no word for two-spirit in Michif yet, and so there's no word for that yet. So when that word comes to our community and it's birthed in some way, then I'll be able to add that word. So for now, I just say I'm two-spirit. But there was a story that Kai shared and did like a research paper on it. It comes from and I can give you the link if you want to put it in the chat. It's a story about a two-spirit person, a two-spirit trans person like myself, that was born a woman but lived as a man, and that was how they were explained to people, like when they were talking about a certain that person that is like a man kind of thing. And so that person wasn't part of the scraping and the preparing of the meat, like with all the women. They were a part of going and selling, and they did it independently. They did it by themselves. So they would have their own bundle of things that they would go around selling and stuff like that. And in this story, it's like the first account that I've ever heard of a two-spirit person in a Michif context. And so I when I heard that story, I came to tears. I was like, wow, I feel like that is a story I want to be able to say that story in Michif. It's written in Michif. You can read it in Michif or in English. And the story is about a person that was going around, and they were very good at selling. They were very, very, very good at selling stuff. And they were crossing some area of land near Saskatchewan, and there is a woman with some dogs that, and when you're not like, it's not like you're on a road, you're not gonna like pass somebody. So if you pass somebody walking through some area of land, it was like, oh, there's someone there, hi, like there's another person, and so this Michif person, realized that this woman was alone with all these dogs, and so they stopped and they had tea together, and she had found out that this person was a widow, and she was on her way home. She was her and her dog, her and her family. That's what they did, was they had dogs, and so she was going home to her where she was from with her dogs. And the Michif person said, "Well, I'm going that way. We may as well travel together. It'd be better for both of us. Company, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So they travel, and they're traveling for months together to get to this place, and they became quite fond of each other. And the Cree woman started to fall in love, and didn't know that Michif person was a female. So that tells me they were a trans person. They were a person that was someone like me, right? Didn't know that they were a woman, and said, I really enjoyed our time together, and when we get to where my family are, we could be married properly. And the Michif person, coming from probably a lot of like stigma and a lot of hard times, because it's a lot of Catholic background too, which that's not allowed. So had laughed, kind of chuckled, and was like, "Do you think I'm a guy? Because I'm actually a woman, And that Cree woman was just like, "What? Like, really?" And it didn't change the way that she felt about her. So she wanted to be married. So they get to this place where that person's from, and they were gonna part ways, and the Cree woman even gave the Michif woman their favorite dog out of the pack that they had just traveled with.